Let me use all of my. The lady has spoken. And after this, PM whenever you're ready. Here.
All right. I can be heard.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. So starting my timer in three, two, one. First, why do you want this high school experience in the first place? Why bullying gets worse and upside? Why long term doesn't really matter? And trade off to being true to yourself. First of all, teenagers are socialized into wanting the high school experience. What does this look like? I think society, through media, family, and peers, romanticizes the high school experience as the place where you are supposed to find yourself. These are the best years of your life. You experience belonging and popularity and have memories you'll remember forever, right? So like again, movies like High Schools and Mean Girls you've probably seen before, and every message tells you that your high schools should be magical and transformative. So teenagers then grow up with a clear preference for these experiences. It's not a shallow whatever. It's like it's internalized as aspirational and identity information for your long term. So the only path to that experience then is through the mainstream social integration, right? I think basically schools do not structurally reward intellectual or niche passions, right? Debate and chess don't get you like prom dates and whatever. They don't get you fucking popular. Clearly, like Veronica has seen that and internalized this right now. The only path to like then Veronica then sees as the dream high school experience is to the integration of the like dominant like fucking popular group. So even if Veronica loses her like loves her extracurriculars, she then understands that they are not pathways to kind of belonging and the emotional development that she's been then socialized to desire externally. So no one cheers for Math Olympiad with like finalists when they fucking in the way that they cheer for cheerleaders in these social groups. So I then giving up like so there probably except that there's probably going to be some degree of a social trade-off where Veronica is probably going to have to spend less time on her extracurriculars. Sure, but I think that it is like Veronica's still going to want to do this. Why? So the high school extracurriculars are probably means to an end, right? They're probably things that she's putting on a resume. She's probably things that she's putting in a university application, right? So passions can also just like evolve and pause and reemerge later in life. So I think the system actually just forces a false dichotomy, right? So either be safe and socially valued or pressure like pursue your niche passions. But I think that if you can drop your activities for now, gain the social capital and emotional healing, and then come back to your passions later on, I think that like Veronica probably doesn't lose her identity, and like she probably can protect it to some extent. This can probably look like maybe spending an hour after school, probably like investing in like her debate fucking club and like practicing by herself. She can probably at least invest some sort of time and some sort of capital into these decisions externally. So she isn't going to completely lose what she wants to do. So also, I don't know, teenage decision making is like influenced by emotional environments, guys. Like teenagers make decisions based on what fulfills their emotional needs in the short term, right? What helps them like escape fear, shame, and invisibility. And note that Veronica's being bullied. So how and also how they imagine themselves to be perceived by others. So she's not irrational. She's just responding to the structure that she's been placed in, right? So the cost of staying true to herself is the continued bullying and the zero visibility and the permanent sense of exclusion that she gets and that she's going to bring to the trauma of her long-term life. So within the emotional region, like reasonable structure like of adolescence, this decision is not selfish, it is survival based. Okay, also why bullying gets like better on Gov side. I think first of all, social protection through power and alignment, right? Popular group sets the rules of the game and what people are allowed and not allowed to do in these things. So who's cool and who gets respect. So Veronica then joining them gives her immediate symbolic protection, right? She's no longer an outlier in these groups. She's now under like the umbrella of like what they're going to protect. So the social system you know rewards like is now rewarded with associating with her. People probably want to fucking like eat lunch with her now, right? So and there probably are just like protections from bullying her, right? So there's probably like some degree of social backlash that people are going to do. It's like, hey, don't fucking touch her. She like helped save the prom queen, right? Note that like all high schoolers aren't fucking psychopaths. They probably have some degree of empathy for her being able to save like the person the prom queen ever. But I think also there's just like a narrative shift, right? She gets rebranded from a nerd. Like teenagers just do follow narratives, right? Veronica used to be the weird chess girl, but she's probably the girl that saved the prom queen that got invited in. So people respect comeback stories. Once she joins, she's probably going to get redefined in this social context and not like as like a continued target that she is right now. Also, bullying requires group approval, guys. I don't know. Like so bullying is inherently performative It happens in groups for last and for dominance. And so once Veronica is aligned with the social top hierarchy, bullying her now no longer brings social rewards and now brings actual risk for the people bullying her. So this is de-incentivizing this bullying, so people do not make fun of the friends, or at least not publicly, without consequence. So yes, passions take probably a backseat, but in exchange, Veronica gets safety and peace and a break from daily emotional traumas. Why then long-term friendship impacts no matter this debate? So she has two friends right now. I think first of all, post-secondary, you have an identity reset. So in university or post-grad, you then choose your friends because you have more social autonomy in your life. So it's not about social survival, but it's based on your shared interests. So unlike high school, where you are forced into social proximity and the people that you have in your classrooms, post-secondary life probably just enables you to voluntarily choose your friends. So people become whole individuals. And also, I don't know, friendships built under duress probably barely last. So trauma bonded or socially isolated friend groups, probably likely when the one is like Veronica is in right now, rely on mutual suffering rather than compatibility, right? They're probably together because they're the only ones that can be together. So even if Veronica did not join the popular group, her friends might just going to fuck off anyways. Or they're going to split paths post high school due to colleges and careers and shifting ambitions. So the very structure of high school social groups ensures most of them do not survive post-secondary transitions. What matters most then is the short-term trajectory shift. So this is not about who your lifelong best friend is. It's about how you actually survive in high school, right? Veronica is now at a breaking point. She's offered the social lever that buys her the safety and self-respect and a test run that the social narrative that she's presented to since a child, right? So the value of short-term catharsis is immense. This means that she stops psychological damage in real time. She gets her momentum going to college with confidence, right? And she prevents her entrenchment in a victim identity that could scar her in the long term. So the short-term shift affects her emotional and social trajectories. Okay. Also, social capital just enables autonomy, guys. So basically, bullying thrives when a student is seen as fair game. So now her association reverses this game, whatever. Also, so this system is also probably rigged against people like Veronica. So American high schools have entrenched social ecosystems that reward conformity. So being a nerd she's socially coded as inferior. So the popular crowd doesn't just have better social lives, they have systemic advantages, right? They get to run student council, they get teacher leniency, they receive more attention in college recommendations. So she realizes that there is a trade-off here. And also this is a systemic harm. So schools often treat bullying as uncool, bullying against uncool students as part of the high school experience. So they should probably told to accept this to some degree. And anti-bullying efforts tend to focus on overt violence, but ignore social cruelties with what Veronica is dealing with right now. So even when Veronica is going to report this bullying, she's told to ignore it and not take it personally, right? Also, I don't know, there's probably a bunch of things. So when so her new group has institutional power, and then also, I don't know, when you're getting bullied, you probably perform less in your extracurriculars anyway, so you're probably going to take a dip in your academic performance on the opposite of the house. So proud to propose.
I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for his speech and now to call upon the Leader of Opposition. Hear.
Right, am I audible?
Yep.
Great. I'll take POS verbally, please. We see that many people in those high schools do not opt into that narrative that being popular is the only thing that matters, and we think that that is absolutely fine. Government has missed a crucial part of their case where they haven't proven why Veronica specifically cares about this, that's one. And two, they haven't proven much impact of that bullying apart from being bullied. That's literally the extent of the impact, which we think is really important because we think there are many covert impacts of being members of popular groups which are nasty, which are bullying, and which are not compatible with the moral code of Veronica. And we think then, at the point at which they are not being comparative with the extent of the impact, we're able to outweigh this on the comparative. 3 pushes then from OO, integrated rebuttal within them. I'll try to flag it. Firstly, we'll be talking about long-term because we think that that's the most important thing. Secondly, we'll be talking about the short-term impact. And lastly, we'll be talking about mental health in general. Firstly, let's talk about long term because we think this is really important. Let's characterize Veronica as who she is. We believe that she has quite good moral code because we think that she was able to help that person who was bullying her regardless. So she probably cares about other people. She is probably quite empathetic towards others. She obviously cares a lot about different academic activities and schools because she was bullied and the government described this as the worst thing that can happen to you. Yet she still perseveres and she still cares a lot about those activities, probably has found peace in those places, probably found like she actually sees herself progressing at the point at which she sees her winning, for example, different chess or debate tournaments, right? We think this is all really important to her, given that she has only a very close circle of friends. Even though she meets a lot of people in those types of tournaments, she's probably also really introverted, and we think this is all valid, and this is becoming progressively more and more validated even in the United States in high schools, right? A couple of points why this will be then better in the long term. Firstly, we say just to characterize why long term is important, because one, it takes more time, so it is more time, so it is more important, we think. So because you will bear the impacts of the long term just for a longer period of time, but also because in other social surroundings that will stem from the fact how you do in high school, you will simply find more of your friends. You will probably lose contact with either one of those groups, like in 5 to 10 years, right? You will, for example, find your new family based off in which type of workspace you end up in, or which type of community you end up living in, right? So we just simply think this has more intense impact to you in the long run. Why do we think you're going to end up in a better situation in the long run when you're opting for our narrative instead? Or for our choice. Firstly, university, and we think this is really important because it is exactly those defining years that she is in right now, that she is likely to find her passion, that she is likely to find what she is good at, and that only is done by experimenting, by going to different tournaments, that by participating in different activities and not wasting time bullying other people or gossiping about what different people like or don't like, right? Which is exactly what they're gonna do on government. We think it is at this point in which you're able to find better recommendation letters by teachers just because you're participating with them in a certain activity, because they're usually teacher supervisors. You can find cool stories for your essays. You can find better CV because you'll probably be actually caring about those sports and like those activities. We think this comparative is quite large because on opposition, at the point at which those activities are seen as nerdy, you will have to cut them off, or you will be at least pressured to cut them off nearly completely because you will be simply bullied for them once again. So we think that this is really important. At the point at which you don't want that to happen, we think you opt into them and you give them the ability to control you much more. But also, when it comes to, for example, work and generally like interviews, we think you're much more likely to get hired to like either good work or even to good university at the point at which you have those skills, such as, for example, like generally speaking skills from debating, for example, or like being able to research stuff because you know you did some cool competitions or you have some national awards from some Olympiads, right? We think this is all really important, but also in those tournaments and in all those clubs, you're likely to find more networking, right? So you're more likely to, for example, get into contact with people who can help you in the long run. This is all really important because, for example, the school that you go in then defines the possibilities that you have in life, the people that you meet and that give you the opportunities. And this is incredibly important in the long term because at the point at which you're able to find something that fulfills you more, you're simply psychologically benefiting yourself. Or if you simply find something that, for example, pays you more money and otherwise you would be dropping out because it's seen as, you know, cool and you can go and do some cool job instead of studying, we think that you are then much more likely to, for example, be able to support your parents, be able to support your family. We think be able to support your kids, like pay them for what they actually need, right? And we think this is all really important psychologically for you. But even if that wasn't the case, no thank you, we think we would then be able to like even in the short term to be quite well off. A couple of points here. One, this group has already proven that they're bullying your own friend group, so you'll likely be asked to participate with them with making the lives of the people that you were sharing everything with the worst possible, right? So we think at this point you will likely be feeling a lot of regrets, but it is so hard to opt out of this group because, for example, they will have much more gossip about you, and it will be you will just be simply much more controlled by those, right? Also, you have proven that you have the moral code, as I was talking about. Therefore, it will be really, really difficult, even if you bully other people, then in the long term to participate in those activities. You will find like new hobbies. You will find like new stuff that you care about, but it will be really, really hard to opt out of this, right? So we say that this is also really important. But also, at the end, when you go to university, you will be just feeling lost because you will have to go with one of these people because you are not that cool person who will be able to fit into the popular group next time, right? So it will be really, really difficult for you then to integrate into other social surroundings because it will be much more devastating for you. And lastly, for example, we think that those are not like real friends and they will much more certainly be talking about you behind your back and you're just simply not used to this and you will be feeling like you're left out. Before I continue on to the last point, happy to take a POI. Okay, let's continue. And we say this is really important. This is directly clashing the point about mental health. We think there are currently ways in which you can feel supported with mental health. That is, that there are specifically new like projects that are there to tackle like mental health issues. In schools, there are counselors. For example, your friend group is much more open because they don't have the persona of seeming the strong girls who can, do anything and bully anyone. They're much more open to you, for example, going to therapy because this is something that is much more usually supported with the people who are seen as nerdy than it is with the popular girls who are supposed to like be strong, right? So we think this is also really, really important. But for example, the fact that you have friends, you can just talk together and have your identity found in the fact that you are smart. You can see the successes in those types of things. You can have the self-worth because you don't feel like you have sold out to the devil and now you're doing the stuff that you never actually liked, right? So we think there are support mechanisms, but for example, the fact that you can see you succeeding despite that bullying is much more empowering than the fact that you join the oppressor and then get your identity lost. We think this is much more empowering and long-term much more sustainable. For all those reasons, we believe you should not opt into the narrative of oppression.
I'd like to thank the leader of opposition for this speech, and now to call upon the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Quick question. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, okay. I think the pathway for OG's victory is quite clear. First, I want to quickly explain that I think it's already been accepted that like high school, I think there is a complete burden missed by op when they assert a lot of high-level impacts, but don't necessarily prove why the actor is likely to rationalize these long-term things in such a way when the most proximate thing in her vicinity and what she knows currently in today's day and age, especially as a teenager, is that she is being constantly bullied, constantly ostracized, and constantly being mocked at a time that she was expected and has grown up expecting to have a good time in. Because high school, I think Emma explains to you, is very romanticized, right? You're expected to have a good time. A lot of the dominant media narratives as to portraying as to how your high school time should be is often from the perspective of very the popular kids, or like not necessarily popular kids, but just in general, it's usually not about the fringe people who are outside the general body of students, right? It's not about the people who get targeted or victimized, right? Those stories and narratives for these victims are often always ones marketed as to be really bad, or like, i.e., this person was always a loner in high school, things like that. There's usually very hard, immense pressure to have a good time in high school, I think, as well. But first, then, I think that the very important thing to recognize here is that the real trade-off in this debate is essentially, do you accept the social, do you do authenticity, or do you value social acceptance more as a teenager? What do you as the actor prioritize? And I think specifically here, right, I think any teenager would obviously prioritize their safety and mental health first and foremost, right? Because I think consistent bullying, especially on years on end for being ostracized for your passions, often actually makes you disinclined to engage with those passions meaningfully in the first place, right? I think this actively does not lead to you being able to discover your passions, but rather this actively pushes you away, especially because these sorts of pressures and these sorts of remarks in your most formative years of development, right before you go to uni and like become an adult, right, will always give you doubt in the back of your mind, saying that like, oh, maybe I shouldn't engage in this again because last time I did this, I was so brutally mocked for it, or maybe this entirely turns you off in general. But anyways, I'm gonna move on anyways. First, then, I think that there's this idea that like there's an immediate relief from harm, right? I think a lot of teenagers prioritize specifically what they can do in the present and what gets them value in the present, right? I think teenagers in particular are very sensitive to social hierarchy. They're very like, when you're constantly targeted, right? I think the initial desire to stop feeling that pain, to stop feeling shit when you're at school consistently, probably outweighs that, because that strong emotional feeling probably outweighs any long-term rationality that I think OO tries giving you about like why like mental health gets better on their side, but also some responses in general, right? I think first, like this whole idea about counselors and therapies, I think there's there's a lot of pressure and like stigmatization around therapy and like counseling in the first place. I think teenagers are very susceptible to those like narratives that say like authorities can't be trusted, or authorities are different from us, or like older people don't necessarily understand your struggles, right? But also counselors have a unique incentive to kind of protect the school first, not really you first. And so the real way that like people feel good about themselves and like actually being able to get out of this mental health rut is specifically social validation from your peers, because humans are innately social creatures, right? And so when you're developing your brain, when you're going in high school, you're probably trying really hard to relate to your peers. You're probably trying really hard to get that acceptance and recognition. But I want to and I think most teens in general, and this is quite intuitive, probably crave social validation and want to be seen and valued in some sense, right? So, and like right now, right, when her intelligence and passions are being mocked and not admired, I think the offer itself, and this is unique because I think it's a tipping point for incentive, I think being starved for external recognition and then being offered this invitation from the prom queen, someone who is at the top of the social hierarchy, makes you feel like you matter and that you're finally invited to the in group. And I know that like OO says a lot about like how things change over the time and like how bullying changes. I think like what's seen as socially acceptable and what's seen as like socially unacceptable changes over time. But I think the general consensus is still that in high school, there will always be an in group and there will always be an out group. And so if you're on the out group, you want to be in the in group to get that social validation because you have no other way to get that social validation when you desperately crave it the most, right? And so this is a chance for you when you hear this invitation. This is a shock factor because when you hear this, you're primed to be like, oh my God, this is what I wanted for so long. And so this is a chance for me to be noticed. This is a chance for me to socially elevate it. And yes, I understand that and so I think the fear of being staying in your current position and having to deal with the fact that you might have to deal with years more of bullying is quite daunting to a teenager, right? No person wants to feel like they're treated like shit consistently. And when you look at your future prospects, you don't want to be at a school where you're consistently treated like horribly, right? I think a lot of people become very avoidant then and avoidant and kind of frame school as very negative. I'll take the POI from opening. Go.
You had the option to opt out of the things you were being bullied for, but you persevered with your friends who supported you, and now you have the option to stay with them and stay strong with them and your
Here's the issue with the entire OO case and this entire line of argument, right? The fact that the way that these people get into the out group is because they initially come to high school with these passions. They probably join and end up getting stereotyped and mocked, right? So there's no actual pathway to be with the in group in the first place. And I think as the years go by, or as you go through high school, the pressure of bullying becomes the tipping point as to when you want to crave social validation the most. But now because people's perception of you are set and it's become socially acceptable for you to be the one on the out group and for you to be the one bullied, no one's going to extend an offer and let you back in, right? No one's going to hang out with you if the perception of you is that you're a nerd and that they're often the people bullying you, right? So I think then this analysis then just kind of doesn't really weigh into this round. But I think in general, teenagers often prioritize short-term gains anyways, right? I think high school students tend to be very present-oriented, right? So they care about their pain, they care about what's more proximate to them right now than abstract ideals like loyalty or loyalty to certain friends, right? Because I think they already recognize to some extent, and I think the way that these friend groups form is kind of a pack mentality, right? It's a survival mechanism. When you're on the out, you probably group with the people closest to you who are also on the outs. This doesn't necessarily mean that you click well and vibe well with these people immensely and that you're guaranteed a future with them. I think this is ludicrous. I think a lot of these friend groups actually end up splitting, even not just for regular structural reasons that Emma gave you as to when you move into uni, but in general, when these kinds of opportunities are presented to you, it's not like your values are ever aligned. But as for this entire point about moral compasses, I think the weighing is quite clear. Your moral compass is never set when you're in high school. You don't really necessarily care about morals when you're in high school. You care about having a good time, a good experience, and getting into and focusing on your long-term goals. These things that social validation gives you. For all those reasons, so proud to propose.
I would like to thank the Deputy Prime Minister for his speech and now to call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Yes, so I can see I'm audible. So I will please like to ask you if you could offer me.
We have so many things we can say still.
Yeah, I think our whole case stands.
Yeah.
Theo, you need
There's
to mute yourself. Theo.
Oop.
Okay. Nice that you see that you're talking with your partner, but please stay muted. Okay, Diallo.
Okay, sorry for that. So verbal POS, as I was saying, and yes, we'll set up my stopwatch and start the speech. Quick few things on the top of my speech. What's important to realize is that high school experience is just 4 years. And like you have been bullied by the prom queen and that cool group for quite a bit of time now. You could have selected to like drop those things that they bully you for. You could have decided to drop those math competitions. You could have stopped debating, and then you would probably not be in the popular group, but you still wouldn't be bullied. We tell you you have this option, but you persevere through the pain because we tell you that, like, first of all, the bullying you're probably experiencing is not that bad, as I will analyze further on in my speech, but also like the OG does not understand fully the incentives that Veronica has and her personality, which we believe is the most important thing in this round. We tell you that like she probably is a very thoughtful young girl that cares about her future and about her academics. That's why she's trying to have this diverse and very like maybe geeky or nerdy, as some people may call it, like things that interest her and that are stimulating for her as she can enjoy them because she feels first of all passion for them, and second of all she feels like these actions like make her like be someone better, make up her personality. That is why she's not willing to give them up. Thus, it's important to realize that like she probably is like experiencing very different narratives than like other people. Because yes, while there are movies that present that you should like be the mean girl and be in the popular group, this is not the only narrative that exists in the society. There are also like many similar like groups of teenagers who simply do not want to live this lifestyle, such as us debating in this room. Like we also chose to like be debating and like not focus on like hanging out with our friends drinking today, which means that she is probably having a very good time with what she is doing, because if she was not having a good time, she would probably change her habits a long time ago. Thus, they cannot just simply say that she's not having a good time because she does not do what the narrative they believe is saying. Thus, we believe that this grants her this authenticity, this main character energy, that she feels good in her own skin, which we believe is the most important thing, as this is an actor motion. We should not focus on like what is best like on average, but what is best for Veronica as a whole. When we're here then talking about like safety and mental health, what's important to realize is how does the bullying look like and what is the comparative on their side of the house, because they never compare it. So first of all, how does bullying look like? Either it's physical, then we tell you that it's very easy to report to authorities and to do something with it because you have much more evidence, and this is something that is not sustainable in the long run. And second of all, this can be like mental bullying, then like making fun of you. Why you can actually take advantage of that? First of all, because you have that support group. You have those two friends that you can talk to because you have probably very close bonds, especially because you are the ones targeted by those bullies together. You are the one who persists. And if you have like only two friends, you probably have very close ties to them that you feel like they are very important parts of your life. You can like talk to them. Second of all, it's like all these competition and the recognition you gain through them. We tell you that actually, like when people tell you like, oh no, you're doing your little funny debating, you can like turn it into your advantage because you know that they are simply jealous of you because they know that you're doing much better than them. And we believe that this can empower you much more when you're at that point in your life when you feel like those things are important to you, that you're not the average teenager who does not see the value in those things, but simply winning this competition and participating means that like people in that particular group see your accomplishments and cheer you up as well. And lastly, adults. We tell you that first of all, adults don't like bullies. Adults don't like people who are doing what the popular group does. And second of all, they can help you to have a better future, which is probably something you aspire to, something you want to do when you're engaged in such activities. What is then the comparative on their side of the house? You will probably be like forced to drink, to like socialize, to like hang out with this group, which will not be stimulating for your brain at all and will be very likely coercive. Because on our side of the house, what's important to realize, you still have the opportunity to like at any point opt out of those activities when the bullying gets like too much. Like who tell you that if the bullying is simply too hard for you, you can opt out of like one of these activities and see if it like becomes lesser. That's like having a less of an implication of how your identity goes. But on their side of the house, it's irreversible, because once you join that social group, once you become like friends with all those people, you need to stick to that. And because you despise that prom queen, because those are the people who hated you and bullied you, you probably don't want to go to them and like tell them all your deep secrets, so you won't probably be such good friends with them. And second of all, they will probably never truly accept you for who you are, because if they were okay with like bullying you and making your life a hell, they probably don't now want to be like best friends and make your life better overall. This also means that you will betray those true friends who stick with you through the worst time, which is something you with your moral values don't want to do, and you will probably be coerced to bully them, also having a very bad mental health implications on you. Before moving on, I can take a POI.
So yeah, you say a lot about like why like this person chose to stick with these clubs. I'm sure this was like you stuck with the club when there was no offer on the table to get into the in-group or get an experience where you are no longer bullied.
No, you don't understand. Like the comparative is not like these two very distinct worlds, that either you're the most popular at the top of the hierarchy or you're the most outcast that does all these activities. You can decide on our side of the house to just simply be in the middle, to just simply like not do those activities, but be in that popular group. On your side of the house, you simply need to defend the world when you're only this popular and you're abandoning everything that you enjoy. Thus, what we present you on our side of the house, that is that firstly, you can talk much better about your mental health, and you can have much better mental health in the long run, because you actually do stuff that you enjoy yourself, and you're not coerced to spend years with a friend group that you don't like and they don't like you bad, just simply like trying to have these false friendships. Second of all, like in the long run, you're much more better off to be like accepted to a good university, getting a better recommendation letter, having things that you enjoy on your CV, than getting a better job, which is something you care about. And in the short run, you're also not giving up on your friends, you're not giving on your life, you're not giving up on your morals. For all those reasons, we're so proud to oppose.
I'd like to thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for the speech. Now to call upon the government whip. Here. Oh, sorry, member of government. This is what I said. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Had me terrified there for a second. All right. I'm starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Pretty simple case here from closing government. Primarily that when joining the group, your Veronica is drastically more likely to find a romantic partner she presumably really wants, because she's been prevented from having this because of her status as a nerd. What we can initially frame is that Veronica is unlikely to have had or have a romantic partner. 4 reasons for this, in fact. Number 1, she generally has few friends. As per the info slide, she has 2 friends as established. These are friends that presumably she's had for a long time from high school, because they've been able to stick together despite the sense of bullying. There's presumably a sense of familiarity there relative to a sense of like romantic attachment. Secondly, she's also generally presumably socially awkward, primarily as the motion suggests. She's a typical nerd. She has the braces, she has the whatever. She's generally presumably pretty bad at talking to potential romantic partners. Also, people are unlikely to want to date her, as a second case, because she is socially an unacceptable person to date. Because she is part of this nerd system in a cliqued and very distinct social hierarchical system like the high school as framed, what we have is it's unlikely someone would want to date the nerd because of the impact to their own social capital. This is what I like to call the normal people case, in terms of you are not able to date the popular person, or not able to date the nerd, because they are a nerd, for fear of your own personal position in the high school social calendar. The third reason, she presumably has very little time to actually get off with anybody because of what she's doing. She's going to debating competitions. I know every debating competition has an imminent draw, but it takes 11 hours. You're unlikely to be able to get off with someone, find a relationship, have a nice kind of situation, and be happy when you're doing all this debating or doing chess or whatever. Also, even if she goes to prom or these kind of situations where it's likely to find a partner, she's likely presumably like working. If she's part of one of these like clubs and she's very nerdy, she might be part of like the photography team. She's unlikely to be there as like the belle of the ball. Note this already works in two ways. Primarily, one, because it works in and of herself, and also it works in terms of people of her immediate social group because they are also very busy, presumably also going to the same debating competitions and chess things. Number four, the group in and of itself is adverse to relationships because they have been socially conditioned to believe they are unattractive, unable to be kind of these unable to be candidates for actual romantic partner. There's presumably instilled a level of body shame, a level of body sensitivity, which means they are unlikely to want to look for a romantic partner. Why is she drastically more likely to get one if she joins this group of people? First, more people just generally see her as an option because she has now more friends. The popular group, if we can imagine in this kind of typical high school, probably includes like all the footballers and all the cheerleaders. This is drastically more people than the two friends she had previously. There are more people. There's just a sheer number of options. In terms of min-maxing your ability to get a girlfriend, meeting more people presumably helps you. Second, more people will want to date her in the opposite direction to what she was previously. People will want to date her for her social clout rather than avoiding her for her social clout. Note this is something she's extraordinarily aware of. She presumably, as we can frame, I think it is unreasonable to expect, over the course of her high school career, has not been able to attract, not been able to pursue the romantic partner she wanted because of the social standing she was in. She was unable to pursue the jock that she really fancied because they were in such a drastically, like stratospherically higher social situation relative to what they are before. So what this looks like from her perspective, from the actor's analysis, is she thinks this is the reason why people haven't dated her before. This is the golden ticket, the silver bullet to her getting this romantic partner she presumably wants. She now becomes a social distinguisher in terms of forming relationships rather than a reason why somebody wouldn't want to date her. Third, she's able to go to these popular kid parties, these big kind of the big kind of high school football parties. You've never lived until you've experienced the epic highs and lows of high school football. You're able to go to those parties. These are also places, just practically as physical spaces, where it's much more conducive to getting a relationship or kind of having these romantic interactions than the debate tournaments or chess tournaments she goes to. I don't know about any of you, but I know one slid into my DMs while I've been on this debate competition. Presumably, you're more likely to do that when you go to the big tailgating party. Third, the popular kids presumably she finds attractive. Two real reasons for this. Number one, if they're these sporty jock types, presumably they just have a level of physical attractiveness that the stereotypical nerd she's hanging around with just simply don't have. They don't have the braces. They're presumably on the football team. They're physically fit. They're just generally seen as more likely partners. And I'm willing to accept there is an extent to which physical attraction isn't the only reason why you're getting a relationship with someone, but it is distinctly important. Secondly, there is an acute sense of social idealization of these people and an extent to which their social importance translates directly into the extent to which people want to have them as a partner. I like to call this like the Jacob Elordi element in like Euphoria. This person is presumably physically attractive, but also because they're idealized as like the king of the school. They're also just in your mind as a nerd who hasn't had this experience. You see them as being drastically more physically attractive than they were otherwise. I'm willing to take a POI now.
Even smart people can be pretty. She is 16, and many relationships are unwanted or
Okay, would you like to
harmful.
engage with any of the reasons why I've given you why you're unlikely to have a partner? It wasn't just she's not very attractive. There are distinct mechanistic reasons why you have less time to get a partner. You're socially unworkable as someone to date, and the people you are distinctly like close with or have social connections with, you're presumably had for a long time, and there's only two of them. You're unlikely to be able to date out of two people. Now, finally, why this is most important to her. Couple of reasons for this. Number one, socially, as we hear from opening, there's just an idealization of like romantic high school attraction. What we want to take this and extend this in terms of there is just pressure to have a relationship in general, irrespective of whether you're in high school or not. There's especially personal pressure on the social element because, as I've established, she presumably knows that her status as a nerd, she's really hyper aware of her status as a nerd. She knows that this is the reason why people haven't dated her in the past, because she can see that people avoid her like the plague. If for any reason, for physical safety. If she's getting bullied every day, you don't want to date the person that's getting punched every fucking Tuesday morning. Second, people just generally want to have a relationship. There's an extent to which you just presumably want to try having sex. You want to try and have a boyfriend or girlfriend because this is somebody that you can just, this is just something that presumably people generally want. Third, and most significantly, this is the fear of going to university or college and not having that experience. In her mind, this is someone that's had no experience, is stereotypically a nerd. She's looking forward to her future in presumably the next 2 or 3 years, where she's going to a massive situation, a massive university that has these huge frats and sororities, that have big fresher parties, where there's an expectation drastically more than in high school for people to have social relationships, people to have sexual partners. When you don't have this, it even feels drastically more important when you're going from a position of absolutely no sexual history to going to university where it seems like everybody's getting off together and having this romantic attraction. This seems drastically more important in Veronica's mind because she's looking forward to the future, thinking scared about not fitting in socially. Again, as per her relationship, as per her experience in high school, she usually hates not being the popular one. She's fear of having this extended for another 4 years of her undergraduate degree because she has simply not had this experience. This is a unique thing she's missed relative to any terms of friendship, and this is in her mind the way she solves this romantic problem. Closing.
I'd like to thank the member of government for the speech, and now to call upon the member of opposition. Here.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, let me get my timer. Okay. All right, my time starts. Oh, I will take PYs in the chat probably. Okay, my time starts in 3, 2, 1. Our teenage years are where we become ourselves. It's where we, for the first time, feel a sense of independence. The visceral feeling that I'm capable of making choices of our own dawns upon us at this time. Part of it is biological, but part of it is intentional. You are adamant at this age to make a life for yourself, to be your own person, and to be the person that you want yourself to be. So, opening government, I ask you, is it worth it? To not only lose your best friends, to not only lose the passions that you fill your life with, but to lose yourself and to lose your identity. I'm going to talk to you about 3 things. First, why does this erode the meaning in your life? The first step to this argument is, I think, something pretty much well touched upon so far. What forms your life right now at this point of time as government and opposition agree is your activities and is your friends. And I want to weigh this against the ways of the influence of like movies and media that open and government talks about. Because sure, you see a high school experience being talked about on movies and TVs, which is what they specifically say. But for you, the high school experience is what you viscerally experience. We have internalized biases towards our own preferences, meaning that what I consider valuable, so for example, debate, means more to me than the influence of the movies and the media that I consume. There are countless movies. The second point to this is that there are just countless movies that already vilify popular girls in media and convey them as nasty, shallow people. So the metric is unclear, right? Like, which movies are you like actually consuming, right? I don't think that matters. I think what matters most to you right now is your visceral experiences of what you do right now. So what happens when you take this deal? First, your friends, they feel betrayed. Because high schoolers are immature and high schoolers are petty. So what you think right now when you take this deal is you feel that your friends, you will have hurt them extraordinarily deeply and you feel that they will never come back to you. The second thing is that your activities will get cut off. The things that you choose to spend your time with, you will never get to do again. And even if this is not the case, you feel this way because you are irrational and you are an emotional teenager. What does this mean? First, you feel empty. You're going to cry yourself to sleep at night on the day you make the decision and on the months passing by. Your parents will wonder, what is wrong with my child? And you don't want to disappoint your parents, so you have to bottle it up, or you have to not tell them, or you have to make up a lie. But thirdly, there's internal conflict. Because as your life crumbles and changes, you're going to blame yourself, because that's how the irrational teenage mind works. And you're going to think, what if I hadn't saved her? Would I be living a life that I want? Would I have these regrets that I have now? Is my moral compass wrong, or have I made the wrong choice? You wonder these things, and you cannot settle on an answer because there's no good answer. You are better off not making this choice. You're better off saying no. And I want to know why this hurts so badly. Because you are strongly attached to your life, right? Because humans are biologically adverse to change. We prefer stasis because it's relatively more comfortable than the unpredictability of change. But also, secondly, because meaning is relative to our own experiences, right? You choose what to do in your life because it is what is meaningful for you. On the comparative, your life is quite meaningful because one, it is structured secure and it is stable around the things you like. And second, you have genuine friendships that you formed around genuine bonds. And this is important because happiness is an instrument of will. That is, we choose what makes us happy. This is the mechanism that opening opposition doesn't prove as to why we continue to do these actions out of popularity, because of the nature of happiness as a principle. The fact that we're still friends with the nerds and still love them and choose to hang out with them is because we will it to be so that is valuable to us. So this is the vertical to their point. Second thing, I want to talk about long-term goals. This is the second vertical extension I'm going to bring you. It's characterized quite well. What you care about right now is as a nerd and your activities. But the analysis that opening opposition gives here is one, you can get into university better, and two, it's good for networking and interviews. This is insufficient because whether or not you care about university specifically or working a corporate job specifically is unclear, right? Maybe I choose a different path. Maybe that's not what I know. You don't know this opening opposition. What we tell you is far more tangible. First, what you care about is getting better at your activities. You do debate, an incredibly painful activity that breaks you down every weekend because you want to get better. And the joy you feel doing debate is worth not spending weekends with your family or doing something else. So what you care about most right now is getting better at the activity that you've chosen to do for a long period of time. But second, you care about your close friend groups. So perhaps OG is right that the friend group breaks up, but in the chance that it doesn't, you will have formed a close friend group that can support you and give you like connections and referrals. So on opening opposition's own point and opening government's characterization is why this friendship is going to be terrible. First, what do you perceive that the reason that she offered this deal is to be? You realize upon her saying this is that you realize that she doesn't actually want to be friends with you. And the reason for this, and the reason you know this, is because she made it conditional. She made the friendship conditional on the fact that you have to give everything up. So you automatically think that this is not going to be a real friendship. This is going to be quite fake. The second thing, as reason, as you know, is as per opening government's own characterization of you consuming media, but also just the nature of popular kids, is that they are quite shallow. They don't make very good friends. They don't talk about emotions. They don't talk about the passions and activities they do. They probably spend their time like sniping and making fun of other kids' weights. So you probably don't really want to do this. But the third thing is, and intuitively, this is buying everything government tells you about how traumatizing the bullying is. If it is true that the bullying really is this bad and you want it all to stop, then right now at this point of time, the last thing you want to do is join the bullies and become part of their group because you hate these people. These people made your life miserable. These people made the lives of your friends miserable. These people are the reason you went home to your parents crying and they asked what was wrong and you had to make up some excuse because you didn't want to tell them that you were being bullied. They are the reason your life is miserable, and there's no one you hate more than these people. The fact that you saved them is arbitrary if they want to push that, because you save them out of your own moral good. That sure, they may be evil, but they're not like, she doesn't deserve to die. But that doesn't change the fact that the last thing you want to do at this point in time is work with these people, is to be anywhere around them. I want to weigh this on the long term because first, when you don't take this deal on our side, you have friends, the people who supported you and love the same activities as you do. You get to continue staying with them and weighing this uncertainty. You know what happens on our side, right? You keep the life that you've had, the life that you love, doing the things that you love on their side. Even at their best, you have no idea what's going to happen, right? Like opening government is not like Mr. Predict the Future, right? What if things go wrong? What if things don't happen the way that they're proved? They don't have any certainty. We have certainty that you retain meaning on our side, and that is important. But the second thing is that you probably feel that in the status quo right now, that maybe like even if I choose to like not to make the decision, that I won't get bullied that much. There'll still be a reduction because very simply, like you saved her life, and given that you have a moral code, you probably feel that okay, maybe she will reduce it because hopefully she has some sense of morality. So you feel that the bullying won't be as bad on our side, but you keep all of the benefits. You keep the friends that were your debate partners, the people that helped you gather the books off the ground when the bullies shoved you to the floor. And weighing against the social benefits they talk about, I think you don't actually care about those social benefits. You care about the life that you've chosen to make for yourself, the things that you've chosen to do for yourself, because that's what makes you happy. We manifest that on our side with absolute certainty. We win.
I'd like to thank the member of opposition for their speech, and now to call upon the government whip. Hear, hear.
Okay.
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. At the start of my speech, I'd just like to point out that closing opposition has given literally zero response to anything that Theo said within our case. So I don't really know how I'm supposed to really defend it, given that he has given literally zero rebuttal, but I'm going to rebut what he said anyway, because that's what you're supposed to do in debate. The main case we get out of closing opposition is that what's most important to you, to Veronica, is doing debate and these extracurriculars and your current friends. I just think there are three main reasons why she probably doesn't think that these are the most important things in her life at the time at which she's presented with this decision. Firstly, I think she's probably aware that she could pick up debate again in the future. She could start doing it again at uni. Additionally, a lot of people as adults do debate as well. It's not something that you just have to do in college. You can actually stay doing debate for quite a long time in the future if you really want to do that. You can keep playing chess as an adult. It's not something that if she stops now, she's never going to be able to do it again in her later life. Secondly, I think that if she cares so much about friendships, I think firstly, there's no certainty that these two people will be her long-term friends for the rest of her life, because critically, whilst yes, they might be trauma bonded in some way because they've all faced the same bullying, these are people that she's been forced to be friends with out of necessity, out of the fact that they're the only two people that will be her friend in school, which means that whilst yes, they might both appreciate that they're all friends, it's quite possible that they all actually have differences in personalities, might have different wants in the future, and it's unclear to me why they would why it's certain that they would all stay friends in the long term. And additionally, I want to point out that being in this popular group also would unlock the ability to be friends with other people outside of the popular group as well, because as Theo has explained, once the stigma around you being a nerd and being bullied by these people goes down, other people will be more willing to associate you with you as well, meaning that the number of people who you can be friends with just increases massively. Moving on to opening opposition, the main thing that I think is left to be rebutted is the impact against her university prospects. I think there are three main reasons why this isn't something that she cares about significantly, or she shouldn't. Firstly, I think there are quite her continuing doing debate and Olympiads and chess has very diminishing returns at the point at which she's been doing it for her whole high school career up to this point. I think if she was to stop doing it, the extent to which it would harm her application is probably quite small. Having one extra debate competition on your university application isn't going to be that much more impressive than the 15 debate competitions that she's done in the past. Secondly, I think she probably thinks that she's able to get quite good grades, even if she spends a little bit, maybe less time doing work. She's probably quite naturally smart and finding school quite easy because she's been a nerd for all this time. She's probably found good revision methods. She probably thinks that she can slack off a little bit and still do well because she has so much experience excelling in school. And thirdly, I think she's likely to be confident in her academic ability to get into a good university, because crucially, because she's a nerd, academics are the main things she's good at. It's the main thing she has success for. And I think this likely means that she thinks that she can get into a good college, either way, she thinks she's smart enough. I think this means is that even if it might harm her grades, she probably doesn't think that it will, because it's the main thing that she thinks she's good at. She probably believes that this isn't going to be something that's damaging to her for all these reasons. Moving on to our main case. We think that accepting the offer to be in the popular group is the best opportunity for Veronica to find romantic relationships, and we think that this is the thing that she cares for the most. Note here that OG flippantly says that she probably can't get a prom date in a one-liner at the beginning of PM in the first minute. This is all that's said about this within the debate beforehand. We give you actually loads of different mechanisms about why she cares about this so much, why this is a tipping point, and why this benefits her in the long term. In opening government, what they tell you is that what she cares most about is social validation. Whilst we agree that social validation is important to her, we think that the romantic validation is like the highest form of social validation. This is because it's the most intimate, because it's not only emotionally intimate, but also physical. And we think that this is something that, because Veronica does have friends, this is the thing that she's been missing her entire life. This is the thing that she has been told by the media that is important for high school, that you should have teenage love, that you should have young love, you should have a boyfriend, experience your first kiss, and things like this. And this is what she cares about the most. And this is the unique thing that is going to cause her to like push the tipping point to make her make this decision. Why does Theo tell you that she cares about this romantic connection so much? He gives you three main reasons. The first one is media pressure. I've kind of already explained this. Secondly, it's because of scarcity, because of the fact that because she's a nerd, and because like firstly, like she doesn't have enough time, and second, and like she's might like not be as conventionally attractive, or people are scared, like don't want to go out with her. She wouldn't have experienced it before, which means that in her mind it's something that she really, really wants to achieve because she has never had it yet in her life. And thirdly, it's because she probably has a big fear of going to college and having this situation repeated where she doesn't have any romantic love at all, or that when she does go to college, she won't know how to interact in these types of scenarios. For instance, she might be scared of going to frat parties in the future and like not knowing how to flirt with people, not knowing how to interact in these types of social situations that she wouldn't ever be able to access being a nerd with only 2 friends. Why then is this the tipping point? This is because now she has more time to meet people because she's not doing debate competitions every weekend. This is because now people are not scared to date her because there's no longer this stigma about her. This means that, like, say, Connor Waldron, who thinks she's pretty and has a crush on her, now no longer feels like his friends are going to hate him if he starts to date her. Now people might like emerge from the woodwork and want to go out with her who wouldn't have had the confidence to do so beforehand. And thirdly, she's just going to interact with more people, who are like more likely to be a good romantic partner. This is beneficial for her in the long run because in the long run and the short term. In the short term, she's likely to have firstly more innate happiness of having, like, say, her first kiss, a first intimate relationship, and this is likely to provide her lots and lots of utility, lots of enjoyment, because she's never experienced these kinds of things before. It would likely to be very exciting, and she would really want to do this, and she thinks that being in the popular group is going to heighten her chances of accessing this. Secondly, it's excitement from these new types of experiences. More so in the long term, she's going to think she'll be able to do better in college because she's going to, for instance, know what kinds of guys to stay away from because now she's interacted with more people, had more range of experience. She's going to have more confidence going into these kind of social interactions. Overall, we give her unique benefit and long-term gains from this that can't be achieved otherwise. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the government whip for this speech, and now I will call upon the opposition whip to close down